I like being in control, which can be very annoying. Besides being annoying, it's also not the easiest trait to live with a lot of the time, especially if we're the kind of person who flinches at the thought of our lives being controlled by someone or something else. I recently thought about it in the context of lockdown and how it changed the way in which I live my life, with less guilt about how others would judge me or with more control over my own time. But this doesn't even have to be about lockdown, because obviously everyone's experience is very different here. It's about the fact that we can never truly control anything, obviously. Our time, our life, or the way our lives are perceived by an outside eye. The desire to control comes with a lot of anxiety, one that can become an underlying condition of every single thing we do. So what exactly are we afraid of when we fear that our lives don't belong to us anymore? First of all, it's obviously very tiring to always have to come up with excuses for the way we live. Let's face it, everyone has different needs, and some lifestyles and choices are more valued than others. So it's natural to sometimes have this need to justify why we do certain things. This is linked to a fear of confrontation with judgment, or even the fear of being honest about yourself, your life, your choices. If you're someone who tends to be judged by your choices because they don't always align with what the majority does, it's easy to turn wary of asserting your own desires, your decisions. But the thing is, we don't need excuses. We are not responsible for whatever other people may think of us. We are not responsible for other people's expectations of us. We have our own lives to lead, and it's no one else's business how those lives are structured. It's really difficult to find the strength to assert one's life. And I guess the only way to do it is through living without comment, without explanation. In other words, show, don't tell. The desire to be in control is also linked to the fear of being put on the spot. If we know that certain things are not up to us, then we're always on the lookout for the next surprise. And believe me, I hate immediacy more than anyone, but it is a part of life. Our birth in itself comes as a surprise to us. We're suddenly thrown onto this earth without a warning, and then we just have to figure it out. Which means our entire lives are nothing more than a ripple effect of the initial, surprise, you're alive, now deal with it. Maybe if we become more aware of it, of the continuous cause and effect of life being just a shadow of the fact that nothing's up to us, we realize that it's impossible not to be put on the spot. We are put on a new spot every second, and sometimes we don't even notice. And maybe worth to throw a surprise party for ourselves, just for all those surprise curveballs we need to pass every single day. So I'd say, get some cake and give yourself more credit. If you try to hold too tightly onto your own life, you may also fear stepping into the real world. Adulthood, responsibility, making sure your life is under control is a full-time job in itself. So how to deal with the fact that at some point we'll get involved with institutions and situations and people where we'll be granted a degree of responsibility for something outside of us. At least we're in this together, I suppose. The real world is scary to everyone. I am, to a degree, scared. And the world we live in doesn't always hold the most positive of prospects. I don't know what will happen to me, but something will. Something has to. And whatever happens, something happens. That should be a new catchphrase. Whatever happens, something happens. And it's always easier to deal with something than with anything or nothing. I can deal with something. Something shouldn't scare me. And if I end up being responsible for something, I can handle it. I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't have it in me to handle it. And same goes for you, I'm sure. Although the desire to control holds other underlying fears, it's also a fear in itself. The losing control of your time because of having to float along the current of external life. Still, we need to keep in mind that controlling our time is not real. In one of my videos, I mentioned Fernando Pessoa's quote about time measuring us without measure, and it does so all the time, regardless of our circumstances. Time is the same however we use it, however we do or do not manage it, or even how we experience it. Whatever we do with this unintelligible substance, it never changes. However, our life or our alleged control over our time changes. The fabric of time does not, so we never have any real control over it. Our state of consciousness, our state of self within and next to time stays the same. And that actually, at least to me, can be comforting. And the same goes for someone else controlling our time and therefore our life. Because everyone has their own time. Even if someone tries to impose their control over our time, at the end of the day, it's still ours. We still experience it in our own way. And as long as we're attuned to our sense of time and our sense of our lives, then hopefully it'll still feel ours, mine, yours. I guess that's where Stoicism can be really helpful, because we can't control anything that happens externally, but we have it in us to have the presence of mind to realize that no one can take our inner perspective away from us. And that is very valuable because it's the only thing only we can take away from ourselves. I honestly couldn't not mention Stoicism since the topic of this video is about control. Although control has so many variables and subsections that I could talk about it from so many perspectives, this is just very, very small part of it. If we live according to external time and external expectations, and we all do to an extent if we want to be a part of society, and it's very easy to get caught up in rat racing. So when we feel we're the ones in control over our time and our life, it's easier to feel outside of this rat racing, and that's why this type of control seems very desirable. I guess that's where lockdown steps into, because to some of us, it made it easier to live within one's own lane without looking at what everyone else is doing. And I fear losing that because, well, I don't like it. Which shouldn't come as a surprise, really. I don't like hustle culture, I don't like the pressure of it, and I don't like that the current situation in the world is so precarious for basically everyone that it's difficult to avoid it. So in this sense, I'm glad lockdown reminded me how much I don't like it, and to some extent, pause or step away. Maybe after living through this period, we'll not resume chasing this image of life we feel obliged to pursue. Maybe we'll be fine with the smallness, the ordinarying of it. Maybe we'll be able to appreciate the enormity of our inner lives without desperately having to find a first row space for them in the real world. I'm grateful to have this inner life, and hopefully in the long term I'll manage to stay in the margins. I like the margins. At least I have a place to sit while everyone is running around. And I'm not saying I don't want to get involved in anything at all. It's not true, I do, that's why I write, that's why I created this channel in the first place, but I don't want to become detached from my own experiencing of it. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that even though we'll most likely always be subjected to an outside control of how our lives and our time are supposed to be organized, to some extent, but we can't control, at the very least, our expectations. If I expect something supposedly grand from life, I might get caught up with the rat racing very easily. But if I don't, I might retain some real control. So the conclusion is, obviously, to control and be thoughtful of our expectations. It sounds banal. Of course it does, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's the only thing that will ensure me that, 1, I won't feel the need to justify my choices to anyone because I'll be at peace with them. And 2, I won't feel like the ground is crumbling beneath my feet when I'm not in control of my time, or the direction in which my life is seemingly supposed to go. How would I know the direction in which my life is supposed to go, anyway? If I did, I wouldn't be where I am today. If life wasn't one giant, stressful surprise, none of us would be here. I'd love to hear about your own controlling tendencies and how you deal with the fear of losing track of your time and your life. Do like and or share this video if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more of my videos in the future. And thank you for your time.